Hey, what's up with it, guys? Hey, welcome back to another video. Now, as you can tell by the title of this one, this is going to be your Moonkin combos. A lot of these will apply to a lot of different specs regarding druids, but these do take into consideration, one, that I'm playing with Moonkin form, two, that I have feral charge and the improved stun, as well as the fact that I have the reduced cast time of Starfire. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. There's timestamps down below if there's a specific part that you want to jump to. One other kind of preface, there's two things I want to say before I start this. First off is that I'm going to be doing this video in combination with a Moonkin matchup guide for each specific class matchup with this spec. I'll post the spec up here, and each spec, and I'll be basically going through the pros and cons and ways to counter each class that we come up against with this specific spec that I've been playing, to give you guys like a better idea and feel for it and kind of what I've learned playing against classes. Now, secondly, the other thing I want to touch on is diminishing returns. I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of what diminishing returns are. If you're not, basically subsequent CC effects of the same type of CC, crowd control, will have a lesser duration on them. So an example of this would be having improved Starfire, giving you a 3-second stun. If you get two of those back to back, the second stun will only be 1.5 seconds instead of the 3 seconds. So when I'm going through these combos, be aware that no matter what I'm saying, I'm going to be assuming that you don't have a DR on the target and you're using a lot of this stuff individually, but be aware of that if you, for example, open with a pounce and then you try and use a bash very quickly, you're going to end up having a reduced stun duration on the bash. So just be aware of how those work. That also does work with grenades, do have a reduced duration based on stun DRs. They share stun DRs. At least from everything I've been able to tell. I don't know if any of you guys have any other kind of synergies with things that don't DR and things like that. I'd love to know more about that down below, because a lot of this is kind of trial and error to try and figure this out. Okay guys, on to our two main DPS combos. The first of which is going to be Starfire into Moonfire, and the second is going to be 2 Wraths into Moonfire. This is your bread and butter as balanced to be able to do as much DPS as you can. Both of these, the idea is that you have the target set up in a route, and this is what you're trying to do to capitalize damage out of the route that they're in. If you have max rank Moonfire already ticking on the target, you want to be using rank 9, which is a down rank from 10 to 9, to use as like your spam or your follow-up for DPS. You don't want to overwrite the Moonfire dot if you can help it. If it's about to be finished, that's a different story, but generally speaking, if the dot's already on the target, you want to use rank 9 so that you're not basically clipping that damage over time effect and you're really gaining the most for the mana output that you're spending. So in this situation, let's go through the first combo. We're going to assume the target's rooted just like this, and you're going to Starfire into max rank Moonfire. Usually the root will break off of that. You can land another root, so you resisted that one. And then the other combo is 2 Wraths, 1, 2, and I'm going to use a down-ranked Moonfire here. And you see that the Moonfire and the first Wrath hit at almost the exact same time. That's why you want to cast 2 Wraths and take advantage of that travel time where there's no incoming damage on the target, leaving you the highest chance that the roots are not breaking. If I was to cast Moonfire after the first Wrath, there's a really good chance that that Moonfire damage will break the roots. So that's why you want to get 2 Wraths off and then use your Moonfire. Sorry, trying to do all that in my head. Yeah, 2 Wraths off and then land your Moonfire. That way you're capitalizing on the fact that they haven't taken any damage. The likelihood that the root is going to break from either that Wrath or the Moonfire is very high. So it basically just allows you to squeeze in as much DPS as possible. You can, obviously, there might be situations where you're not able to do all that and have a full 3 seconds or so to cast. But if you can, that's what's optimal in most situations. Now, another thing to really touch on that's a really, really important one for just druids in general, if you're running feral charge, is how you can optimize the snare out of feral charge. So, for example, if I go into bear form, I can feral charge, and then I can travel form away and create a ton of distance just off of feral charge. Now, feral charge does not DR on itself. I don't know exactly how it interacts with entangling roots. I don't think it DRs entangling roots. I think it's kind of like its own category, which is why if you see the debuff, it's red instead of the spell debuff. But yeah, so be aware that you really want to try to prioritize using feral charge as much as you can. On to Torn related stuff. Now this really only relates to War Stomp. War Stomp is an amazing ability. I basically always use Nature's Grasp. You're gonna assume that you can't hard cast Entangling Roots, right? So you want to prioritize Nature's Grasp as well as War Stomp. However, you also can chain a bunch of different things out of War Stomp. So you want to, depending on the matchup, which I'll talk about this more in specific matchup guides, you want to use different abilities with War Stomp. The most common that I probably use is War Stomp into Entangling Roots, because you can do so many things assuming that a melee DPS is rooted. However, you can also land some damage off of this via War Stomp into a Wrath Moonfire, or even if you have a Nature's Grace proc, you can War Stomp into Starfire Moonfire, and that will actually proc. So let's see, I wanted to bait out rank 1 Moonfire for the Nature's Grace proc. So you see here I War Stomp into Starfire, and it does clip a little bit early. You have about a half a second of leeway that they could potentially interrupt you, but it's important to understand the synergies and how you can kind of try to squeeze out as much damage as possible. And again, if you had a max rank Moonfire already ticking on the target, you could go ahead and rank 9 Moonfire to follow that up, doing a lot of damage out of that 2-second stun. Okay guys, with our last few combos here, they're going to be kind of engineering related. So the first of which is going to be, I just want to point out that you're going to be able to use Gnomish Death Ray. Oh, sorry, let me move that over. Gnomish Death Ray while you're in any of your other forms. So like Bear form, Cat form, Moonkin form, you can use Gnomish Death Ray. The same is true for, I think, every one of these trinkets. I don't think there's a single trinket you can't use while in Bear form or Moonkin form. So Gnomish Death Ray is actually a good way to catch people off guard when it comes to your overall just DPS output, especially while you're in Bear form. I prefer using this in Bear form actually over any form, because you can chain it with Bash, and it will ensure that the target doesn't move during the duration. So you can see here, if I feral charge in, then we Bash, and then we go ahead and Gnomish Death Ray. He's stuck standing in the stun the whole time, and then you can, hop out and then do whatever after that. Let's put on the Goblin Mortar. Now, this one I have a couple macros made that I'll show you after, but basically it's a use of the, It's a use of the Goblin Rocket Helm with a Stop Attack macro added into it at the end, as well as a Cast Goblin Mortar at my cursor. So what you're going to do on this one is ideally be able to set up one Starfire. You're going to Goblin Rocket Helm into them. Then you're going to Starfire into Moonfire into Goblin Mortar. All three of those will hit roughly at the same time, and then you can actually chain off of the Mortar stun itself. So let me show you that in practice here. So we're in Moonkin form. We're going to go ahead and Starfire. We're going to spam our Helm macro. We want to create a little bit of distance. We're going to do the same thing, and then I'm going to spam my other macro, and you can see he's stunned there. We can get another Starfire off into a downrank Moonfire. That's kind of like your bread and butter stun lock 100-0 type combo that you can run. It's really fun to mess with. You will obviously have to have engineering to pull that off, but yeah, see, he's all confused. So, but it's a really cool combo to use, and I saw there's a guy, his name's Rex Troy, I think, this Paladin guy that uses so many really cool creative ways of using engineering items. So I got the idea from him based off one of his videos, and that's how you adapt this to really optimize the damage output as it relates to Moonkins specifically. Now, it's important to note that the Goblin Mortar has basically 2 stacks of damage that you would have to dish out for it to break that stun. So with that being said, since you aren't running Insect Swarm and you're only using Moonfire, you're only going to get 1 damage proc during the entire duration of that stun, no matter how you cut it. So you're good to basically guaranteed land that every time. If you're having a hard time landing that very last Starfire, you can use Wrath as it's a quicker cast time, or if you're trying to create distance or things like that, you can also potentially use Entangling Roots or something like that out of that if that's what you're trying to do. But that's really a really fun combo to use. And the last part to mention with all of that is that Goblin Mortar has a minimum range, so that's why you have to create a little bit of distance between you and the target, because if you try and cast it like right here, it will be too close. I'll post those macros, both of them, down below in the description, but I basically explain what they are. But if you want to try that, if you guys have engineering, that's how I'm basically your 20-minute cooldown, but it's like 100 to 0 combo. Especially if you get one crit, it's game over. Now the other thing is to point out and mention is that you can Iron Grenade. Iron Grenade, as you can see here, is a 3-second stun, and this is assuming that nothing has been DR'd. So that's going to be a little bit hit or miss because we do have a lot of stuns in our kit, especially if you're torn and you're war stomping at all. So just be aware of that you can DR that pretty easily. But if, for example, you have everything else on stun and you're trying to, grenade and root some off target, then that's fine as well. But just be aware you can channel all the same things. It's a 3-second stun, so you could grenade into Starfire, you could grenade into roots, you could do all kinds of stuff out of that as well. Now, one other thing that we have the utility of as being druids is just cat form in general. Now, if you do get lucky enough to be able to open up via cat form, if you're running the talents that I'm running where you have improved pounce, it's a 3-second stun. So what this allows is you to get 2 global cooldowns off before the stun breaks. If you're trying to apply bleeds, you're going to use rip and then rake, or rake and rip. Am I saying it backwards? I don't know. But you're going to basically use your point generator and then your point spender. If you want to try to land a roots during this, you're going to basically rip right away and then roots right out of it. So in this situation, I'm going to go up, and this is just trying to get max dots. See, and then I can go straight into Moonkin form, right? And then he's got a bunch of dots on him. And if he's trying to attack me or whatever, of course, the roots gets resisted. But you see what you can do basically in the opener. Just with all those instant cast abilities, he's at about half health. Now, I don't have to do that much to finish someone off, so if you do get that opener, it is really, really great. Now, the other one I was mentioning is you can go into cat and you can pounce. Then you're going to use rip, and then you can root after that. So I'll show you guys that. Oops. And then you're going to root out of that. I was a little delayed there. You can see the gap in my cast. I clipped. But you get the idea. That's the point. So depending on what you're going up against, you can do different things like that. And the pounce and rip damage is not so significant that it's very likely to break the roots. You can see the roots are still going with both of those being up. So that can be a good combo depending on what you're trying to do. Hopefully you guys learned something new and have some kind of cool creative ideas after seeing this. I'd love to hear and see any kind of combos you guys are being able to pull off as Moonkin specifically. Would be really sick. So let me know down below if you guys are doing anything that I didn't mention that you guys are finding really helpful or useful when it comes to PvP. With that being said, keep a lookout for my Moonkin Matchup Series that I'm going to be posting up here pretty soon. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.